How's it going, everybody? Michael Oskam here with ProAudioLessons. Today, we're going to take a look at Wave's update to their Studio Rack plugin. That's coming up right now. All right, how's it going, everybody? As I mentioned, my name is Michael Oskam. You are watching Pro Audio Lessons, and today we're going to take a look at Wave's new plugin, Studio Rack. Actually, it's not a new plugin, but it is a new version of their plugin, Studio Rack. So it's got a new look, some added functionality, and we're going to take a look at all of it. But before we dive in, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, check us out on patreon.com/ProAudioLessons, and you hear me, I'd like to hear you. Drop me a comment, question, concern, anything you'd like down below. The Patreon link will be down there as well. And that's enough of the business. Why don't we take a look at Wave's Studio Rack now? Wave's released their new Studio Rack update to their plugin. And the good news is, the best news is, it's free. So if you own some Wave's plugins, one of their bundles, any of that good stuff, then you're going to have this license already made available to you, and you can go ahead and install it and start using it. What is it? That's a good question. It's a very interesting idea, and what it is it's well, let's start here. It's designed to make your life easier as a mix engineer. Okay, it's not entirely original, as there are DAWs like Studio One. I believe it's even possible in Logic. There are ways to save plugin chains within your DAW. Studio One makes this very easy. As you can see, we're working in Logic today, but in Studio One it's easy. And what you can do is you can save a plugin chain. So say, for example, you have a mastering or a master bus or mix bus chain, like I have. Let me pull up my mixer here, like I have over here. And what you can do is you can actually save these in order with all of your settings, etc. And then you can recall it, on any and every session you want, Or if you have a vocal chain that is pretty much your go-to set of plugins, then you can recall it. Well, so this Studio Rack takes that idea and just kind of builds upon it. So at its core, its basic element is just that. You can see here when you pull it up, you're going to be able to come in here and you're going to be able to load Wave's plugins. That's the only limitation to it, is you can only use Wave's plugins within the Wave's Studio Rack, which I suppose makes a lot of sense when you say it out loud like that. But it's very cool. You can search either directly for the plugin if you know its name, or you can go through the menus here and search by whatever type of plugin, whether it's a delay, a compressor, etc. So let's build a chain together here real quick, just so you can see how easy it is. So a typical chain, let's say we're working on a vocal. Okay. So we're probably going to want to start with some EQ, maybe some tape saturation. You know what I mean? Let's start with some tape saturation. That's an interesting idea. Let's do it. So I believe we have Kramer tape in here. There we go. And there it is. So Kramer tape. That's one plugin. Okay. And of course, if we had some audio, we could run it through and get the settings as we like. But for now, we're just kind of leave it where it is. After that, let's say we go to some EQ. All right. Let's use the SSL EQ. All right. So there's our SSL EQ. And although it's not like many of the graphical EQs like the FabFilter or even Logic's stock one, you can get pretty precise with this in terms of notching out frequencies that you don't like, and giving broadband type boosts to those that you do. So let's say we have some Kramer tape that can soften some of the harshness of the digital realm. Then we can move into an SSL EQ. Now let's compress. I like to actually stack compressors on vocals in particular. So one technique that I like to do is I'll use let's use the CLA 76, and what I like to do is use this in its bluey mode, and I'll set its attack to very, very quick, and its release to pretty quick as well. And the idea there is just to kind of clip off any sort of transients that are getting a little bit out of control. And then beyond that, I'll use more of a buttery, silky sounding compressor like the the CLA2. And we'll use that to kind of just get more of an even performance. And so that's kind of my 1-2 punch on something like vocals. We have the 1176 clipping off any transients that are going to cause the LA2A to overreact. So that way the signal coming into the LA2A is a more balanced, less transient signal so that the LA2A can do its buttery optical compression type thing. After that, like I mentioned, I like to sandwich compressors with the Pultec. It's a great sound. We can give it some life. We can give it some air up top. And we can give it some nice warmth in the bottom, depending if it's a male or female vocal. We'll toy with it at that point. And let's say after all of that, we'll do something like Vocal Rider, for example. And boom. So there you go. There's a pretty simple vocal chain. And that is at its core the basis of this plugin. There is a lot more that it can do. But for simple chains that you want to be able to save, that's great. So then all you would have to do at this point then is save it, and then we could put it into preset menu as, and we can call this my lead vocal chain maybe. Okay. And now we can recall this on any channel. So let's say here's the background vocal sum. We can come in here, we can load Waves Studio Rack. It's going to be right at the top here. And here we go. We can load my lead vocal chain because that's the most recent one. And boom, there it is, recalled. And then, of course, depending on the material, you can go through and tweak everything as necessary. But it saves you a lot of time. So that is, in itself, just a very simple way to use this plugin. It will save you time. And it will also give you more consistency from song to song, particularly if you're mixing an album and you've kind of built a sound, say, in one song, and you want it to be consistent, throughout the album. This is a really good way to do it. It's very helpful on mix buses, as I mentioned before, because you can have the same sort of bus compression, bus EQ, just to shape the overall tone of the track. And that's particularly helpful when moving on to the mastering portion of it. Next, what I'm going to go into is some of the more in-depth functionality of this plugin, because it allows you to do things that you are not able to do otherwise. For example, you can create multi-band compressors out of any compressor that Waves makes, which is insane. So we'll get into that next. So here we are. I've switched over to a Pro Tools session, only really just to show you that this can be used in any DAW. And so what you see in front of you here is what's called a multi-band split arrangement within this plugin. Let me show you how I got there. So let me back this out, and we'll get rid of it. And so just so a little bit of housekeeping, just so I can show you a little bit of what's going on here. These neon green channels here, these are synth parts. Most are serum patches, and then there's an Arturia Analog Lab patch for 808s, but I don't even think I'm going to have those on. Anyway, just so you get an idea of what's going on. And those are all being summed together to this synth sum here. And for those of you who are familiar with Pro Tools, but maybe thinking to yourself, this doesn't look exactly like Pro Tools. Well, I would ask you, what version of Pro Tools are you using? One of the new features, and this is not at all what this lesson is about, but I just want to explain real quick. One of the new features in Pro Tools version 2020.3.0 is the introduction of track stacks. Thank God. Logic's had them forever. Studio One has their version of it. I'm sure other DAWs do as well that I'm just not familiar with. Thankfully, Pro Tools caught up in the year 2020, and Avid came up with their version of it, which is what you're seeing here. I'm not going to go into that in depth, as I said, but I will do a lesson on that later on because it is extremely beneficial and useful, not only to increase productivity and enhance your workflow, but also in terms of creativity, like possibilities and things that you can do that you weren't able to do before. So look out for that video in the near future. But that is all just to say that these green synth tracks are being summed together through this sum. And when something's being summed to a folder track like this, you can see I can collapse it very much like Logic. You can see those represented here by these blue bars in the sum. All right, so I turned those green real quick so we can see exactly where we're at. And let me just play this real quick so you also get an idea of what this sounds like. So nothing fantastic, nothing special, but you get the idea. So on the sum, I'm going to go ahead and instantiate the new Waves Studio Rack. Excuse me. There it is. And I'm going to show you how I got that multi-track setting, or excuse me, that multi-band setting. So in the first insert slot here, you can come in here and you'll see a parallel split and a multi-band split. If you click that, you'll notice that this shows up, and they're numbered 1, 2. They give you 5 bands, and this is what's so great about this. Okay, let me launch my go-to multi-band compressor. I'm not saying that you have to have this one, but this is certainly a popular one used by professionals all over the place, and it's the FabFilter Pro Multiband, or Pro MB. There are tons of them out there. There's the Logic. Logic has a stock multiband compressor. There's a bunch of them. This just so happens to be the one that I like. And for those of you unfamiliar with what a multiband compressor is, I assume you know how compression works. So what a multiband compressor does is it allows you to apply compression to a specific range of frequencies as opposed to the entire sonic spectrum. So instead of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz or 20,000 hertz, you can, for example, as I'll show you here, create a band, and you'll see these will turn into what are called crossover points. And so here you can see that only the low end here is being compressed. Okay, so basically from about 200-ish hertz, 208, see that number right in the middle there, 200 hertz and down. From 200 hertz and up, it's not being compressed at all. So very, very, very helpful. And then once you want to dive in, you can, it's the same settings as would be on a normal compressor. We can mess with the threshold, the range, the attack, the release, makeup gain by the output, all of that good stuff. And with this particular multi-band, you can create as many bands as you'd like. I mean, that's a little bit of overkill, but it's pretty. It's a lot of colors, right? And so then it has floating or adjustable crossovers. And each one of these bands can have different settings in terms of its threshold and everything beyond that, attack, release, etc. So very, 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 very cool. So if we take this idea of what a multiband compressor is, right, wouldn't it be nice, and this is what the Studio Rack is going to allow us to do, to say, make like a Frankenstein almost version of a multiband compressor. So like on the band that's 150 hertz and down, this can be an 1176. Now, why would you do that? Well, 1176s have a certain characters to it. one of the fastest attack times possible. So it's really good on transient heavy stuff like drums. So let's keep this multi-band idea that you're seeing in front of you here in mind, and that let's go back to the studio rack, and what we'll see here are slots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These numbers here in hertz, right? That's going to be our crossover points. So, for example, we can set this to 200, and that's exactly what the multi-band over here that we had up a moment ago is doing. Let me pull that back up so you can see. It's exactly this idea. So let's see, we put this band to 200, right? So now 200 hertz and down is going to be compressed or processed. Now this is only a multi-band compressor, right? This allows you to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plugins to independently process, in this case, 200 hertz and down of this signal going through it. That's insane. Now, the reason I'm using a compressor is basically just to show you, right? I could go much further in depth and show you all sorts of wacky, great, creative ideas that we could come up with, but we would be here all day. So I'm sticking to something that is relatable for right now, and that is a compressor. So you see a multi-band compressor there on the right with the fab filter. On the left here, we have the studio rack, and let's just say, okay, so for 200 hertz and down, we're going to use the 1176. Boom. Okay, and let's see, from 200 hertz, let's do this, 200 hertz up to 500. Yeah, let's say to 1000. 1000 hertz, we will have a, let's get creative here. Let's see what else I have. We'll have an API, which is more of a bus compressor, but, and then from 1K to 8K, we'll have, I don't know. We'll just keep it real simple. Let's do like RComp. Okay. And then from 8K to 20, we'll have, I don't know. The DBX 160. How about that? Okay. So now we have a Frankenstein-looking multi-band compressor here, all of which are completely independent in terms of how they can be processed, and then obviously what can be added to the signal chain. I don't have to go much further for you to really understand the limitless possibilities of this and just the wonderful sounds that you're going to be able to get. So not only, as I discussed earlier in the video, not only is this going to be a time saver for you, because you'll be able to save presets on plugin chains that you know you go to on all, everything. Okay. Me, for example, I have a pretty set mix bus chain that I start with. The only thing that I'll switch out is typically like the compressor. If I want a different flavor of compressor, I'll switch that out. And sometimes I'll tweak the EQ and use a different EQ, but typically I'm always going to start with the SSL bus compressor in there, the Waves version, and I'm always going to have a Puig Tech, or the Waves Puig Tech, which is a pull tech. I'm always going to have that EQ in my chain, so I can save that as a preset in here. So not only does it save you time, but it gives you limitless possibilities to expand your creativity and just come up with wonderful sounds that you probably never even dreamed possible. I mean, it sounds poetic and it sounds almost cheesy, but it's actually true. Now, this plugin has a lot more functionality beyond this. Okay, there's something called macros, which is a little high level. So I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to take up much more of your time. But if you guys are interested, I'll definitely go into that. Leave a comment below if you'd like to see me explain the macros a little bit. And also, you can do some different things with this down here. This pan knob is not just a pan knob. For those of you who have been using Waves plugins for a while, you'll know that there's a Waves plugin called the S1, which is an imager, or it'll enhance either enhance the stereo width, or it will help you in modifying certain signals. Well, that is actually built in to this by way of these pan pots down here. So if you'd like, I'll go into macros and a little bit more of how the S1 is integrated into this. Just leave me a comment that you'd like to see that. Last thing I'll say here before we sign off, you'll notice here too, there's solo, right? So let's listen to this. I haven't at all tweaked, right? These are just the default settings on these 4 compressors, but let's hear what we got. Oh, wow. A bypass. Back in. And let's solo through some. So here's 200 hertz and down. And let me mute the... That's pretty cool. 200 to 1K. And not only can you solo them, you can adjust the level of that band. So if you thought that 200 hertz and down was too loud, you can bring it down a little bit. That is unreal. That is so cool. Alright, let's take a listen to the R comp here from 1K to 8K. So, as you can see, it is a plugin that you will find useful. Is it for everybody? Maybe not. But is it for you? I guess you won't know until you try. So, as I mentioned, it's free. Otherwise, I'd say try the demo. What's the point in that? You're going to get the whole plugin for free right now. Head over to Waves. They don't pay me to say that. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, keep mixing. See you guys later. Bye.